Hello and welcome to McIver's Grant Public Library's Knight in Shining Armor Challenge. Would you like to be a knight in shining armor? You can earn a virtual badge on Read Squared. Our story time today is one of our challenges in the mission. We also have activity packets you can pick up in the main lobby of the library. Right in front of this Kids Zone entrance is a big summer reading display with bins and bins and bins of bags of craft and activity packets you can pick up and take home and create by yourself, okay? You can also pick them up during through our curbside service. I hope I'm not this tongue-tied when I'm reading. All right, this is called Good Night, Good Night. It's by Shelley Moore Thomas with pictures by Jennifer Plecas. It is published by Puffin Books, and let's read our story. Once there were 3 little dragons. They lived in a dark cave. The cave was in a dense forest. The forest was in a faraway kingdom. The poor little dragons were very lonely in their deep, dark cave. In the kingdom, there was a good knight. Every night he kept watch. He watched from a crumbly, tumbly tower. It was on top of a very, very tall wall. One night, the good knight was on his watch. He heard a very large, very loud roar. So the good knight left the crumbly, tumbly tower. He climbed down the very tall wall. He jumped on his horse. Away, he said. He galloped through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. He came to a deep, dark cave. Inside he saw the first little dragon. What's this? He asked. Methinks it's a dragon. And he drew his shimmery, glimmery sword. The dragon had on his jammies. He was all ready for bed. Oh, good, you have come, said the dragon. Could you bring me a drink of water, please? Then I can go to sleep. Is that what you were expecting? Did you think the dragon would be me? The good knight did not know what to think. But he was a good knight, so he got a drink of water, and he gave it to the dragon. Then he tucked him into bed. Good night, good dragon. Sleep well, sleep tight, said the good knight, and then he galloped away. He was a good knight, wasn't he? The good knight went back through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. He got off his horse, thud, and he climbed up the very tall wall to the crumbly-tumbly tower where he stood watch. He stood watch for 5 minutes, and then he heard another very loud, very large roar. I don't believe this, he said. He left the crumbly-tumbly tower. He climbed down the very tall wall. He jumped on his horse. Away, he cried. He galloped through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop, and he came to the deep, dark cave. The second dragon was in her jammies. She was all ready for bed. Oh, good, you have come, said the second dragon. Could you please read me a story? Please? Then I can go to sleep. And could I have another drink of water, said the first dragon. The good knight did not know what to think, but he was a good knight. So he read the dragon a story, and he tucked her into bed. And he got the first dragon another drink of water, and he tucked him into bed. Good night, good dragons. Sleep well, sleep tight, said the good knight, and then he galloped away. Look at his horse rearing. Doesn't that look dramatic? The good knight went back through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. He got off his horse, thud. He climbed up the very tall wall to the crumbly, tumbly tower where he stood on watch. He stood on watch for 2 minutes. Then he heard another very large, very loud roar. This is too much, he said. He left the crumbly-tumbly tower. He climbed down the very tall wall. He jumped on his horse. Away, he cried. He galloped through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. He came to the deep, dark cave. The third dragon had on his jammies. He was all ready for bed. Oh, good, you have come, said the third dragon. Could you sing me a song, please? Then I can go to sleep. "And could you read me another story?" said the second dragon. "And could you get me another drink of water?" said the first dragon. The good knight did not know what to think, but he was a good knight, so he sang the dragon a song, and then he tucked him into bed. He read the second dragon another story, and he tucked her into bed. He got the first dragon another drink of water, and then he tucked him into bed. "Good night, good dragons. Sleep well, sleep tight," said the good knight, and he galloped away. The good knight went back through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. Then he got off his horse, thud. He climbed up the very tall wall to the crumbly-tumbly tower where he stood watch. He stood on watch for 1 minute. Then he heard the largest, loudest roar of all. "Not again," he said. Look at how tired that knight looks. He left the crumbly-tumbly tower. He climbed down the very tall wall. He jumped on his horse. "Away!" he cried. He galloped through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. He came to the deep, dark cave. "Oh, good, you have come," said all 3 dragons. "Let me guess," said the good knight. "Another drink of water?" "No," said the first dragon. "Another story?" "No," said the second dragon. "Another song?" "No," said the third dragon. "Then what do you want?" cried the good knight. "We need a good night kiss," said the little dragons, and they lifted their scaly little cheeks. "This is going too far," said the good knight. The good knight. But he was a good knight, so he bent and kissed each scaly little cheek. "Good night, dragons. Sleep well, sleep tight," he said. And the dragons said, "Good night, good night." Look at the pictures. He's kissed every one of them and tucked them back into bed. The good knight left the cave. He waited outside. He heard the loud dragon snores. Then the good knight went home through the king's forest, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. He got off his horse, thud. "Now," said the good knight, "maybe I can get a good night's sleep." And that is just what he did. Sleep well, sleep tight, good night. Have you ever had an evening like that? I've had an evening like that. All right, you get to check this off of your list of good night of missions for your knight in shining armor mission, not your good night mission. And I look forward to seeing your other things that you're going to do to become a knight in shining armor of the McIver's Grant Public Library Roundtable. Have a good day. Bye-bye.